And so we came home about the same time, and I said, let's go bowling. He said, well, where are we going to bowl in Sarasota? I said, we're going to go to Sarasota Lanes. He said, now, when did they integrate Sarasota Lanes? I said, I don't know. He said, now you know that's not integrated. I will go with you, and you will ask, can we bowl? And if they says no, we're going to leave, right? I said, right. Well, we got there, and we just went over and said we need some shoes and whatever, and the guy who was behind the room where they rent the shoes says, what do you need shoes for? I said, we're going to bowl. He said, not here. And so Sylvester said, okay, Ed, let's go. I said, no, hold on. I said, why? And then after going through that, the owner came up. He said, I would be happy for you all to bowl, but I would lose all my customers if I allowed you all to bowl. But if you want to come back after it's closed, you can bowl for free.
The settler of what today we know as the Rosemary District, and I don't think people would refer to that as Newtown, but that was actually the first black community in Sarasota, that immediately adjacent to downtown, right across Fruitville Road, that back in the day was 3rd Street, that I think some people still to this day refer to that as the Mason-Dixon line. And for me, what is interesting and is that Mr. Colson, a freed slave in 1884, was the gentleman who at 5 points, the circle of 5 points, which was around which the rest of the city and for the most part Sarasota County would then radiate. It was Mr. Colson that drove the stake into the ground that started the surveying process that mapped out the streets, residential lots, etc., that the city would be designed upon.
Our teachers cared about us. If we didn't have food to eat, they brought food there for us. I'll tell you about my 6th grade teacher, Miss Hattie Johnson. She lived out there in Johnson Camp. She was one of the first teachers for the kids it was a church school. And so what happened is that when lunchtime, she would bring watermelons, corn on the cob, everything that there was to make sure that those children that couldn't eat, they had food to eat. And that's what I'm saying. Our teachers were nurturing. And I just give thanks to God that we as an American people right here in Newtown, they cared about us.
Sleepers Cafe was built around 1959, between 59 and early 60. And beyond that, what we have now is Fred Atkins Park was really not Fred Atkins Park in its beginning. It was the area from whence Nathan Coombs would do his recruiting. Recruiting was recruiters that went up on the season before Julio Chavez came along and people became migrants. Black folks went up on tramp trucks. We had several of them known in this area: Nathan Coombs, Abe Jones, Grandpa Gordon. A bunch of these people took people up on the season, and they rode on the back of trucks. Buses only came after the Hispanics became migrant workers. We were known as season people. People went up on the season.
Nobody was answering the phone. So he stayed on that phone trying to tell me how to breathe and everything until all I remember was I heard the doctor come in 7 o'clock in the morning. And he came in there and I was passed out. I remember he shook my arm. I guess I had fell asleep. He had shook my arm. And he had checked me to see if I dilated. I guess the usual, they'll check and see if you dilated or whatever with your cervix and stuff. And my baby head was already coming out. And I just started panicking. I was in shock and I just started panicking. Because all I heard him do was run in that hallway where the nurses was supposed to be in. And I just heard him yelling, who the F supposed to been taking care of her? Where's the nurse? Blah, blah this and blah, blah that.
We had one incident on Siesta Key where a guy came in with a truckload of bottles, the glass bottles. And I don't know, he must have been there before we got there because he recognized every vehicle that we went there in. He got out and put bottles under the tires of each car that we went in with. So with that, I was out in the water at the time, so when they called me, I went back out and faced him and asked him, why did he do that? He said, because he had a right to. I said, well, I tell you what, I want you to have a right and get every one of those bottles out from under those tires. You can do whatever you want to do with it, but we want them out. We want it out now. So he looked around and saw he had no support from the other group. So he got on and he got all the bottles out and all of that stuff. So after that, that started to smooth him off, and we could go to the beach every week there. And that's why we started going to the beach there to Siesta Key.
So this gives our children a glimmer of hope. But we just can't take these things for granted because there are still people out there doing everything they can to hold us down. There are people who are out there trying their best to change the laws, to take them back to the 1940s so that people who are entitled to vote will not be allowed to vote because they know that that vote is power. There are people who are trying everything that they can to keep some of our children from getting the education that is their constitutional right. So they create all kinds of problems, all kinds of situations. They create suspension. And if you look at the suspension records, you'll see who's being suspended the most. That they tell us that our children cannot learn, which is absolutely not true. The thing is, you don't know how to teach them, or you don't want to teach them.
They say, well, you can win this race. I say, well, that's not what I want to do. And so they say, okay, well, we're going to put your name forward anyway. I say, hey, man, I told you I don't want to run for no city commission. And so in the process, my oldest brother, Jake Atkins, had moved back to Sarasota from Bridgeport, Connecticut, and he had done some local political action in the Bridgeport, Grizzly Terrace kind of area, neighborhood, and I talked to him about it. He said, well, hey, I'll tell you what I do. Because, you know, he was 7 years older than I am, so very few people really knew he was my brother since he had been gone for nearly 25 years. And so he kind of went around and did a unscientific polling of the community. And he came back to me and he said, man, you know something, these people really do like you. You might could win this race. He said, you're going to have to win it from the street people. I say, the street people? I say, that's who I am. He said, well, those are the people that really love you. I said, well, I can understand them. Those are the ones I've been working the hardest for. And we sat down and we talked about it. He went and rechecked his survey and he said, go for it.
We lived in a community where we had everything we need. We had grocery stores, we had cab companies, we had our teachers lived next door to us. And I grew up in the housing projects, Mays Court, Newtown Project. I tell you, it's like unbelievable because we had everything we wanted. That I can remember being in the first Easter parade, 1962. Fred Jackson started the Easter parade, and I am proud to be from Newtown. I went away, moved to Miami, and as a child, I thought Miami was heaven. I thought it was like all the movie stars, but our stars are right here in Newtown. Newtown is a great place to be.